A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away from Scandinavia, there was a garden that didn't know what was about to hit it.
The sagebrush in the rain, the eucalyptus in the rain. You see, the spring was such a marvelous thing there.
The garden was about to be invaded, built upon. It was about to bring in artists and business people from around the world to paint clouds to look like real clouds, to create people to look like real people. The sort of place where you'd wear costume jewellery in the daytime. The sort of place that invented youth and glamour, where Marlene Dietrich could wear black feathers and be framed in a train window and be lit in a lattice of shadows and somehow look believable.
How have I changed?
Youth and glamour came out of its test tubes. No one was supposed to be plain here, or sad, or old, or racially equal, or sexually different. What denial? What eugenics? And yet it attracted people, selves, ideas, styles, shapeshifters. It became a bauble, this place, shiny, perfect, brittle, something you could see yourself in. Movies started to be in the air here. Of course, this place is called Hollywood. A fantasy name because one of the things that won't grow here is this, holly. Why did movie people come here? Because of weather, sunlight. And because on the East Coast, New Jersey and New York, the film process had been patented, copyrighted. Take this example of copyright. For years, film running through viewing machines had snapped because of the tension in the spool. Then the Latham brothers and people around Thomas Edison had the brainwave of creating this simple loop, which created a bit of slack, which would allow the machine to stop, project an image, then move on again without tearing the film. This so-called Latham loop was patented by its East Coast inventors. You had to pay people to use it and other discoveries. But California was very far away from those rights owners, so you could break the law there. Filmmakers in these years were discovering that to make it look like people in different shots were looking at each other, or that armies were marching towards each other, the camera had to stay on the same side of an invisible 180-degree line drawn between the two people looking at or talking to each other. Because this rule was new, filmmakers in the late 1910s sometimes broke it by mistake. Later in The Squawman, DeMille made such a mistake. A man's dangling from a cliff. He's looking right. The cliff is on the right. But then DeMille goes to the bottom of the cliff to show the man's fall. But he films from the wrong side of the man, so it looks like the cliff has switched to the left of the screen. The shot would have been more spatially clear if it was like this. And to make matters worse, his friends come to the rescue, leaving screen left, but entering the next shot, screen right, as if they've taken a detour to the pub. Once this discovery was made, it was used throughout mainstream cinema. This scene from The Empire Strikes Back, an old-style movie made 60 years later, shows how enduring the discovery was. Darth Vader's on the left of screen, looking right. His underling, to whom he's speaking, is in a separate shot, looking left. Because of the 180-degree rule, we completely believe that they're looking at each other.
Set your course for the Hoth system. General Veers.
Investment in cinema increased tenfold in the late teens and 20s. Hollywood became an industry. The money often came from the East Coast bankers. On the West Coast, it was spent by a series of production bosses, working-class Jewish businessmen. Adolf Zucker, a Hungarian immigrant and fur trader, set up famous players, which would become paramount. 4 Canadian-Polish brothers set up Warner Brothers. A brash Russian called Louis B. Mayer ran MGM. They built big, boring bunkers called sound stages so that filming could move indoors into the dark to control this light. This scene in Citizen Kane shows that Hollywood would work wonders with light. The beams make the library look like a sepulchre. The documents gleam.
Thank you, Jane.
Hollywood set up a production line system, the way that the Model T Ford motor car was assembled. In Japan at the time, directors led the production process. But in Hollywood, it was production bosses like Zucker and Mayer and Warner. Below them, in the movie barns, writers would concoct stories. Talent scouts would find new starlets in coffee shops or magazines. Set designers in the boring buildings would invent magnificent buildings. This is what legendary Hollywood designer William Cameron Menzies thought Baghdad might look like. Inhuman in scale, elegant and decorative. Costume designers conjured lifestyles and selves and got to know the bodies of their stars. This is one of Marilyn Monroe's dresses. Makeup artists came up with new types of foundation and eyelash and look. This is the room and table where Marilyn Monroe went blonde. Engineers devised new technology. Lights to illuminate hair, to make eyelashes cast shadows on the face of Marlene Dietrich in Desire. Dollies on which to move the camera to make the image glide. The image glided and gone with the wind, as if blown by the wind away from the lovers and the sunset. Chaplin thought like a dancer and a vaudevillian. Here he rehearses a comic movement before filming it in costume. Actor and producer Norman Lloyd knew Chaplin and also Alfred Hitchcock, who was born not far from Chaplin in London.
Hitch came from a middle-class family. His father was a poultry dealer, fish and poultry, and Hitch always had an aspiration to be part of that world. Charlie came out of the direst poverty that you can imagine, unbelievable poverty. I mean, stuff like he and his brother, Sidney, who was his half-brother, stealing fruit, rotten fruit. They would know where the wagon was with fruit that was going to be dumped. They'd go and get that fruit, eat that fruit. His mother being put into an asylum and out, in and out. I think his father was a drinker. Charlie had such an upbringing that it's in the movies.
And never more so than in his first feature-length picture, The Kid, which recreated the rooms and relationships of Chaplin's childhood, cold mornings, worn-out bedding, life in a London garret with a bath on the wall. Chaplin plays a version of his by now famous character, a penniless tramp who thinks he's a gentleman dilettante, He finds an orphan boy and brings him up. The boy starts to work for his dad. He breaks windows so his dad can fix them. Shot in America, of course, but English-style windows and doors. Eventually, the boy's taken to an orphanage. Chaplin coaxed a brilliant performance from Jackie Coogan as he's taken away. The film humanized comic cinema. It D.W. Griffithized it, you could say. It showed Chaplin's passionate empathy with the poor. He was a huge hit around the world. Chaplin was cinema's Charles Dickens. He built his own studio in LA in the English style and filmed it in time-lapse, a rare thing to do, which shows his pride in it. He had Final Cut on his films. His premieres were mobbed. The studio today looks like a row of English houses plonked in a megalopolis. A deleted scene from his film City Lights, that Chaplin made 10 years later, shows how his mind worked. He's on a street corner. A piece of wood is stuck in an air vent. Chaplin begins to play with it, to improvise. The Soviets thought of him as a Marxist, but Chaplin was almost a Jungian too, a believer in play, inspiration, finding ideas within yourself. It's like he's strumming on the table, letting his unconscious do its work. "60 years later, the British director Nicholas Roeg also seemed to try to show the unconscious lives of his characters.
Could be right. Then again, why spoil the mystery?
The people act cool with each other, but their hands, filmed in close-up, suggest twitchy mental energy. Chaplin's deleted scene is a lovely little poem about daydreaming and street corners.